Dolly Thakore, and I'm in Mumbai, and I've enjoyed reading the book. And I'm looking forward to meeting the writer and discussing with her what it's all about and how she gets those kind of ideas.
So first and foremost, I think it is a privilege to be, to just see you in person, because I am such a huge fan of yours. I have watched you.
I like that.
I am your fan. It's a fan moment for me to be talking to you. And I think if my words have been able to get me to reach you and talk to you, I think, quite a bit of my distance of writing has been covered. I have watched you in the film Poroma when I was barely in my teens. And, you stole the show, and I can go on and on about you, but
I think no end of myself.
It's fantastic. I think you have every right to think no end of yourself. So I'm so glad that you enjoyed the book. It's my debut book.
The first thing that excited me about the book, the minute I opened it, was your beginning of 1971 and the Bangladesh War. Because at that time, I was very involved in politics. I was very involved. I used to read the news on television. And so I knew everything that was going on in the country. So it's a very personal way of starting. And the second thing that I want to say is that because you write about Shillong and Meghalaya, my sister-in-law is from Shillong. She's my ex-sister-in-law. But, it's taught me so much about that part of the country, which I didn't know. We always thought Shillong, Meghalaya were remote, far away from us. But my brother married her and it became closer. It didn't last too long, but like all the stories in the book, there are reasons for which no one can be blamed, especially not the women. And so I loved reading it. It became a very personal account for me.
So glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. So Dolly, you can tell me a little bit about which are the chapters that really resonated with you. I would love to talk to you now that you have a little idea and you are personally related with Shillong. I would love to know which story touched you.
You don't mind if I keep referring to the book, do you? Because
yes, please. It is my book. It's my debut book, and it's in your hand. It's such a wonderful feeling.
Okay. The first chapter, which had me hooked completely, was Does Your Cat Speak to You? Now, I don't know what the cat has to do with it. I went through the whole thing, but I didn't know what the cat had to do with it. But I loved the story. And I was, so, this whole thing of what happens about intercommunal marriages and this thing of her being married to Aslam and wanting that red tika in her head. And then what happens in the end. I mean, there is so much drama in it. There is so much empathy in it. It's got everything. And in such few pages. I am totally amazed at your ability to communicate so much in such short paragraphs. Because I know we go through what I've been brought up in is Dickens and Charlotte Bronte and not Ruby M. Myers. I never read those, but everything was quite long-winded. And here, in just a few pages, you've been able to communicate the emotion, the problems, the way they existed, the historical background, the physical background of the place. I am totally bowled over. And I would recommend this book to everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dolly. There cannot be, a greater compliment than that.
Lady standing up behind you.
That's my mother. Yes, my mother.
Right. She wanted to have a look at me, I suppose.
Yes, I'm sure she wanted to have a look at you.
Am I talking too much or too little?
Amazing. I'm so happy that you enjoyed the book, because as a debut author, we're always so insecure when we come out with our first writing. It is, of course, from my heart, and it sets me in my journey. I've rebooted my career all over again. I was a housewife for over a decade, and I don't think it sat very well with me. and
Mahua, what I liked about it is the honesty. You know, the honesty with which you write about the emotions of the women, and every emotion, not just about marriage and being neglected in marriage and the lack of sex in marriage. Those are very common. Unfortunately, women don't share that part of their lives, but it is so proper and common everywhere. Now that one has a lot of good friends, we can talk about it, and you get to know how limited their marriages are, and how limited the bloody men are. You know, I mean, I think they are to be blamed in a lot of ways. But I suppose we too have to be blamed for having tolerated them, for having put up with that, with not having raised our voices against it. So it's not that I blame only one side of it, and they don't know better, since no one's ever reprimanded them or checked them or told them where they're going wrong. So we are equally to blame for that. But the pain that it causes, the loneliness that it causes, the emotional upset that we go through, that is something that you have brought out so beautifully in most of your stories. So, if you want me, I can even this pinch of Sindhu, which is so lovely, and I don't know why you call it the cat that can speak to you, or did your cat speak to you?
I would love you to read a few lines, Dolly, if you would like to read a few lines from the book.
Well, I'll tell you what impressed me about this girl who is being ignored so much, and is waiting for somebody to put that red sindoor in her hair. And she says, we went to college together, discussing Tagore, Bankim, Nazrul Giti, and arguing about which author had more depth and meaning. Aslam always made Paromita sit on the handle of his cycle. Aslam never seemed too religious. But one day, Paromita found him brooding near the tree where they met. As she touched his arm, he winced. Aslam got up from where he was sitting. Don't touch me, filthy Hindu. And without another word, started walking away. Now, you know, that is such a shocking kind of reaction. And you don't realize that these things actually exist in society. We go around thinking that, you know, everything is acceptable, we are all one. And yet in the minds of these people, God knows what goes on. And more so today, I'm sadly to say, but it does exist. And this is not only just 1971 and 81 and things, but even today. And then you've got this line which says during 1971, 200,000 to 400,000 Bengali women were allegedly raped. But this doesn't apply only to Bengali women. It happens to all women everywhere in every society.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dolly.
So that was the first one that affected me. And then the one about Malti, Nautanki Saala, you know, where he never touched her, he never said anything to her, and her memories blurred with the burning summers, the drunken men, the debauchery, the desperation. And then how he leaves her and she goes in search of a show. This is, if she goes from Bangladesh to Delhi, I think she comes. Am I right there, or have I missed out something?
I think you're probably on another story, but most of my protagonists actually in the book, Dolly, it is about a journey that they've taken within themselves, or
That's
they've gone
right.
out of their comfort zone. And I think these journeys are not chronicled ever, because we only talk about women who've had great education, can speak great English, and they've, done very well for themselves. When we often ignore the little journeys that a lot of women,
No,
especially
but
when
but the tenderness with which you have handled the emotion, that is
Thank
what
you.
touches me the most. You
Thank
know,
you.
I mean, most rural women migrate from rural to urban areas,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it is the tenderness with which you have handled the subject, which is very, very touching. You know, then Biswas will never speak about her. And this is Chirapunji. Now, Chirapunji to me was always pouring with rain and
Is.
lots of water. It is I think they're one of places which receives the most rain in the world, if I'm not mistaken. I'm certainly in India, and Meghalaya is a home. Now, one didn't realize that for us when we were growing up and we were here learning about Chirapunji, that there were emotions that people had, that they were going through the same kind of man, adolescence, growing up, puberty, emotions that we have, you know. And that is what I love about your short stories, Bahua, because it's brought out the reality of the people, no matter in which part of the world they are. They're very sensitively done, you know. And how this girl, Wajiri, am I pronouncing her name
Yes,
right?
absolutely right. Yes, surgery. Yeah.
You know, uh, how she longs for companionship. She longs for the man that she married, but he just ignores her. He's not there. He goes away. And then she's told later that he's never going to come back. And then I would love all the people that are listening to me to read the book. I would hate to preempt things for them, but all I can say is that it is such a well-written book. It's not prolonged and underlined, and there is not a single sentence of boredom, which one finds in a lot of reading. And I do a lot of reading, let me confess to all of you. But and I don't like short stories. It's the first time that I picked up a book and I've read every single short story with the greatest delight. And I've loved it. So I
Thank you
would
so
ask
much.
all the listeners to please pick up these books. And it relates to you. It relates to your emotions, to our emotions as young girls, as adolescents, as college going students, as young married women, everything. And as I was reading it, um, the memories of childhood, the memories of college, the memories of the crushes that we had on people, it all comes back. And very true, there's no point in denying that, oh, I'm very poor. I never had any of those emotions. That's not true. We all have it. And it's amazing the way Mahua has put it all together and made it your own. Everything becomes personal.
Thank you so much, Dolly. I'm I'm speechless, because I'm so glad the book is in your hand, and you've being a voracious reader, you've found merit in my writing, because it's my debut book. It just encourages me to keep writing and continue doing my honing my craft as best as I can. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
I want to ask Mahua, now that I've praised your book and loved it, is how did you arrive at these stories?
Well, I think I remember born storyteller, but I kind of did not recognize it early enough. I needed to have the boredom of being at home and being unwell for very long for these stories to emerge in my head. And, I have met lots and lots of people across the shifting of different cities. And, my next, I do write and ponder a lot on displacement, because we as Bengalis were displaced from Shillong because of the insurgency. And, we left behind, we did not even get a chance to say our goodbyes, to our friends, people. Our homes were taken over by the army. And my mother and me, and my father was already had moved to Delhi. So thank God he was alive, because so many men were like mercilessly beaten up, butchered during that time. And none of us, I was very, very young to even comprehend, the way school shut. And those things stayed back, because what displacement actually does to us, only when we grow older, we realize how much, we are not anchored in any place. And that sort of feeling unanchored, brings out the creative streak inside me. I can talk for myself. And that's where the stories have come in from.
Is there a great stress on education in Shillong and Meghalaya and places?
I think the education was phenomenal. Of course, I have been really on many thought, I've been thinking a lot about it, because I think being upwardly would mean putting your daughter into a school better than your own, which I think as parents, my parents went out of their way to pay up. My mother went out of her way to pay up, and my father really coughed up everything for me to go into a school like Loreto. And if I'm able to write well, it's also
I'm a Loreto girl. I'm a Loreto girl, but I'm Loreto Lucknow.
I'm Loreto Shillong. And
okay.
So Loreto inculcated a lot of reading habits in us. And, and I think education was very good till this entire, outsider, conflict began, and the insurgency started taking over in the Northeast. So from there, I moved to Delhi, and I think Delhi was, I would like to call Delhi my home, but yet today, after years in Bangalore, I still don't know which one is home, whether it's Shillong, whether it's Bangalore, whether it's Delhi. So education is fantastic, but then of course, because of the insurgency, schools were shut indefinitely. And, there used to be curfew, used to be there, where it was shoot at sight order. Yes.
Can I ask a political question? Were you affected when there was this whole big thing against the non-Bangalore Karnataka crowd and the Shillong crowd? Didn't that, it was all over?
Karnataka, no. Karnataka, I think, is a city, and it has been fantastic. It has really enveloped me, welcomed me, and really embraced me. I owe a lot to the city, Bangalore, because if I had not been as, to be able to walk into a cafe, get out anytime you want, because I wrote from, between my parents taking turns in the hospital and in a cafe. So that's where my writing journey began. But Shillong for sure, politically, yes, because a lot of people from the Northeast feel that the center has not probably given them the things that they need. They felt very, very neglected. They have not felt recognized enough. So the minute there is any sort of insurgency or any sort of trouble that happens, the first thing they do is they want to shoo away the outsiders. They're called the Dokars in Shillong. So that's a word.
There is a story in your book about that Bengali man who's in Shillong and is told to get out.
Mr. Das.
Don't want foreigners. Yeah, what is the story called? I'm sorry.
I forget the name of the story, but I think a long way back home, if I'm not mistaken, I will tell you. I've got my long way from home.
A long way from home, yeah.
Yes.
Then, no, because what they did was they did send all the hairdressers and the people working in beauty salons home. Didn't that affect the business and the economy of the place?
At that time, I think I was very, very young. I was not even a teenager when I had left Delhi, left Shillong to go to Delhi. So work perspective, I would not know at that time. I just know that overnight, my mother and me, we left. I had no clue what I was doing, what I was leaving behind. And I think Delhi embraced me. Delhi didn't care whether I was a Bengali, whether I wasn't a Bengali. So, I've written an article, Dolly, that for very long, I think I did not want to tell people that my name was Mohua. And, because I wanted to hide my Bengali identity. And the more I was trying to hide it, the more it started taking bigger roots. And I was getting more, it was coming up in a much more recognizable way into my own persona. And today I'm at a place where I know that I was raised by, stereotypical middle class, educated Bengali family. So my sensibilities are from there. But yes, I've learned to apologize for being Bengali for very, very long.
Mahua, you also talked about Manju Randi. Now,
Yes.
is that a personal experience or was that from about somebody that you knew?
It was somebody that I knew.
And is that very common? Does that happen often?
Yes, I think it's very common. I think a lot of girls go through a lot of all this sort of name calling, and there are a lot of people. I also run a podcast called the Mohua Show. We just recently had a lady who had come onto the podcast because she lost her son called RV. He had committed suicide at the age of 18 because he was constantly being teased in school, and they took him to the toilet and tried to check his private parts. So some things get reported, some things don't get reported. And during my times, for sure, many, many things don't get reported. And, people don't talk about it just for the fear of losing reputation. And so I just thought that my book needed to address these things that girls face, and they don't. And this is a trauma that's a lifelong trauma, and people don't know how to talk about it.
I'm very impressed that you've so boldly written about these things, because these are very common. And it doesn't mean that just because I'm talking to you that it didn't happen to me either. It happens to every young girl. Yes. Every young girl. And I've acted in a play called Vagina Monologue, in which we talk about the young girls and women and single women and all the sexual assaults that take place. Yeah. So, this kind of awareness to be created is very, very important.
I think whenever a woman is rejected, she's slut-shamed. So if a woman rejects any sort of an advance from a man, she's slut-shamed. So this sort of shaming, that happens for women, I think most of us feel that it must be our fault, and that's the conditioning we've had, and that conditioning needs to change. And that's what has been my endeavor now, because this is one part of me as a woman. I relate to the body shaming, the slut shaming, the name calling that all of us have faced in our lives, but we are very frightened to talk about it.
Okay, there's another aspect that you have brought out, which is about parents and priests and religious gods or whatever telling you that this can happen to you if you don't fast, if you don't touch my feet, if you don't pray to me. And in that you've written about how maybe someday your husband may also desire your body if you diligently do the Monday fast. Do you believe in that?
Not at all. That's the reason I spoke about it. Of course not. I don't believe in it at all.
But yes. Do you know people who adhere to that and who force that?
Of course, I know a lot of people who adhere to a lot of fasts that they do for the, for the sake of for the family, for the sake. I think fasting should be done purely for your body, so that you can cleanse your body. I mean, people talk about intermittent fasting, and that's probably good. And I think people, the sages probably found out about it later.
There's the story about Tapan Das, yes. Shobha's savior in disguise, and his family. They were part of a Bengali cluster who had been displaced from Bangladesh's Faridpur district too. Shobha could feel the urgency of the migrants through the narrow by-lanes leading to Tapan's house. Familiar smells of food wafted in the air, making Shobha feel at home immediately. Do you clamor for that? Do you long for that?
Yes, of course, I do. I long for that. I have a huge longing in all my stories. I don't think I won't be able to overcome that ever, Dolly. What I try and do is that I try and write as much as I can every time. I think writing has been my best friend till now. The more, the older I'm growing, I have to admit that I'm quite lonely. I don't have too many friends, and I think writing is a great way for me to overcome emotions that sometimes become overwhelming. Yes, there is a huge longing inside me. And I've not been able to pinpoint that longing, whether it's the longing to go back to Shillong, to the simplicity of the hill station where everybody knows everybody. And, you know, my mother isn't as lonely as she is today, with my father having passed away in the month of August. And how today, even a neighbor, probably we would not be able to communicate because we don't share a common connect. Yes, there is a longing.
Mahua, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And what I do want to say is that it's not only about Shillong and Meghalaya and Guwahati and Assam, because she's also written about the Banjaras and the nomadic tribe of the Mewars of Rajasthan. So whatever she's written, those emotions are universal and they will touch everybody's heart. Continue writing, and I look forward to reading more. Thank you very much, Mahua.
Thank you so much, Dolly. This is really, I'm in gratitude for you liking my book, and I will continue to write because I'm really grateful to the universe that, you know, we've gotten together today. This is a huge privilege for me. Thank you. I think we are done.
Okay,
Thank you.
while you all are done, please let me say that I would like Mahua to read my book. Mahua, but
Yes.
mine is a book. It's not short stories, but it's all about my life from childhood till, well, till today. I'm still alive. It's called Regrets None, and it's published by HarperCollins. So I
promise to pick it up tomorrow.
love it. And then let me
I
know.
promise to pick it up tomorrow, and I promise to get on a call, and I hope whenever you come down to Bangalore, I can take you out for a meal or come over home for a Bengali meal.
Well, I do come to Bangalore quite often because I come to Nityagram. Nityagram is my second home.
Please let me know next time you're here.
And Arundhati Nag's Shankar, Shankara. But right now I'm suffering from osteoarthritis in my hip. So I'm not traveling that much. So I was supposed to be there on the 18th and
Get well soon. I would be in Bombay probably on January 15th or the 16th. And I would love to see you. If,
come. Just give me a ring. Get my telephone number from Shushruta Sarkar and come.
I will do that.
It's such a difficult sounding name. Can't we call you Shush instead?
I do call him Shush. Shushruto.
Yeah, he's got my number, so I'd love you to ring and come and share a meal, come and spend the day, whatever.
And thank you so much, Dolly. Gratitude, like I said, it's a privilege.
Lovely.
It's a fan moment for me, so thank you very much.
Bye.
On behalf of Readers and Writers Club, I would like to thank both of you, such mega talented personalities, and what a delightful conversation you all had for the past half an hour. It's going to be a phenomenal session to remember in a long time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you, Shush. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.